nature, it's divine that we don't. Well, we create each other. How about love one another? Don't you think so? Oh, don't you think so? Like the mountain and the river, yeah. We're just like the valley and the sea. We're designed by Mother Nature. Yeah, we are all the same, but each unique. We're not meant to be or do the same thing. By nature, it's divine that we don't. Well, we create each other. How about we love one another? Don't you think so? Well, we create each other. Let's love one another. Oh, don't you think so? Oh. Thank you.
I want to talk about nature, which is an easy thing to talk about in the Northwest because we're surrounded by some really nice nature. Really nice. I'm very grateful. I lived in an apartment and then a condo, and I eventually had to move to someplace with a yard just so I could sit on grass. And it got to the point where that wasn't even nature enough, and I needed more nature. I love nature, and I want to share with you a quote from one of the most famous architects ever. So if I said, who's a famous architect, who would you say? See? So let's quote him. He said, nature is my manifestation of God. Nature is my manifestation of God. I go to nature every day for inspiration in the days that I work. I follow in building the principles which nature has used in its domain. So he was saying, I look to see what nature does, and I try to do that myself. And look what happened. Nature is an amazing, amazing teacher. It teaches us because in nature we will, if we are observant enough, notice certain principles at work. And principles can go across different areas of study. Judge Thomas Troward, who was a major contributor to this particular philosophy, said, I only read two books, the Bible and nature. And out of that came an incredible metaphysical philosophy. So I want to talk about some things that I've noticed in nature, and I think you've probably noticed them too. So the first thing that I want to bring up is that in nature, balance equals health. In nature, when things get out of balance, they get unhealthy. And they get out of balance oftentimes because something has either been subtracted or added that wasn't there naturally. So balance equals health. For instance, we have some issues in some of our waterways because people brought in either plants or animals that were not indigenous to this area, and they upset the balance, and the waterways are not as healthy. Recently, I saw a very short video on the effects of taking wolves out of Yellowstone Park. And first service, I call it Jellystone, so you know what I listened to when I was a kid. Yeah, they took the wolves out of Jellystone Park. And everybody's, Yellowstone Park. They took the wolves out of Yellowstone Park so that supposedly then that would give the deer and the elk more grazing room. They thought that was a great idea. Well, they reintroduced them because things were getting out of whack, because there was no longer balance, and therefore the area wasn't as healthy. Reintroducing wolves, even a small amount of wolves, changed the way that the elk and the deer grazed, because they were no longer in the valleys, because that was too exposed. So they would go into places that were less exposed. Well, they weren't supposed to eat the valleys, because when they ate the valleys, they took the grass away, which allowed for more erosion. Plus, they would eat down the small trees, and so the trees weren't growing up, which was habitat for other animals. So they reintroduced even some wolves, and things started to shift. Shifted so much that there was less erosion. It even shifted the shape of the river, and the river became healthier because it was filled with less silt, and therefore then the beavers returned, and the beavers would create ponds, and then there were fish, and then brothers and sisters, there was a revival. There was a revival, and it was all different in Yellowstone Park. Praise God. Now, can you understand that balance equals health? It equals health in your body, doesn't it? Now, I need to tell you that I was a salesperson. And all you had to do is get them shaking your head, yes. So, let me just be upfront. Does balance equal health? Oh, good. Let's go on to the next thing. Another thing that I have noticed in nature, besides that balance equals health, and that nature really strives for balance, and that it's often our interventions, whether knowingly or unknowingly, that disturbs that balance and therefore disturbs the health of the ecosystem that's prominent in any given area. And the other thing that I have learned from nature is that it's generous. Have you noticed that it's generous? Nobody's noticed it's generous? I notice now you're like, I'm not shaking my head, yes. Where's it going? Just tell the truth. Is the universe generous, and is nature generous? Have you noticed that a tree doesn't really want to have thousands and thousands and thousands of little seedlings around it? It only wants maybe one or two, but it produces thousands of little seeds. Why? So it can share with the squirrels and the birds and everything else. I don't really need that many blackberries. But the bushes just want to support, grow everywhere, share their wonderful black fruit. I live with horses. They are abundant in what they give away. Thank you for understanding. Which then abundantly fertilizes the fields, so it can abundantly grow grass, so our horses can grow abundantly fat. It's all in a cycle. Nature is abundant, so that it not only will perpetuate the species, but that all other species around it do well. There is this tendency in nature to give. And I'm going to call her Mother Nature right now, because when I move into this awareness of nature, I can't help but feel a maternal feeling, a feeling of caring, a feeling of encompassing. We call it Mother Nature in Peru with the Andean civilization that I'm going to call them, well, they're the Quechua, the Andean civilization that live in the high Andes, that escaped Catholicism by going so high up the Spaniards didn't want to follow them. True. In that place, they would call it Pachamama, Mother Earth. And there's a great love for Mama Earth. So in the many times, and I've actually lost count, the many times I've gone to Peru, I am still as aware of the Quechua and their reverence for Mother Earth as I was the very first time. So the very first time I remember the shaman that comes from the Andes, and I'm separating that because there's also different spiritual system that comes from the Amazon, but I'm talking about high Andes spirituality. In those people, they believe that Mother Earth will care for us and give us everything, just like Bridget discovered by sitting out at a vision quest. Only they live that way. My favorite shaman that I have adored since my very first time is named Benito. Benito and his village live at 16,000 feet. Think about it. And he comes, he and his sons or nephews will hike down that mountain and meet us at 11,000 feet and share of his wisdom. At that altitude, the only thing they can grow are potatoes. And like George Washington Carver, they make really good use of those potatoes. They use it for everything. They have enough abundance of potatoes to take them down into the villages and trade for things like wool so the women can create blankets and scarves and the things that they need. That then they will take to us and sell to us for an exorbitant amount of money. But I remember the very first time I went and I was talking to an Andean shaman, and he said, what he said, I'm going to just share with you, and some of you that have been in some of my classes will understand this. It was like being instructed into the philosophy of Emma Curtis Hopkins. He said, you need to know exactly what you want. Pachamama will give you anything you want, but you have to know, and you have to be specific. Can you be specific? Can you really know what you want? Like, wow. No airy-fairy, I just sort of like to be, more peaceful. Wouldn't go with Emma Curtis Hopkins, wouldn't have gone past the shaman either. Right, Eviania? Right, Joy? Oh, baby. Very, very specific. And then they went into another phase, which is after you get specific, what is it you have to release so that you can have what you want? See, that's the perennial philosophy. People that live very close to that which breathes us, are aware of the same information. Whether it's Emma Curtis Hopkins or some guy that does not speak Spanish or English or read or write. And they're getting the same information, drawing it up from something. So the first time that I went, I was so enthralled with that. But here's the deal. You could ask Pachamama for anything, but first you had to give to Pachamama. Just as Bridget wasn't aware of the prayers that went into her experience and the consciousness that went there, there is still always this giving and receiving. So what we had to do was something that's called a despacho, which sounds to me like cold soup, but it's not cold soup. It's a ceremony where the shaman brings the best that he has, and you kind of bless it. The best he has. Now, you have to understand that at 16,000 feet, and then, in various markets at lower altitudes, the best that he has may not be what the best that we have, but you have to give the very, very best. And he is so proud. They're so proud. Like, they bring the very best flowers. They can't do any flowers with any flaws. And we're asked to breathe on coca leaves and put our desire into the coca leaf. And they have to be perfect coca leaves. They can't be, like icky coca leaves. There's no notches. They can't be bent. They have to be absolutely perfect. And they go through thousands of leaves to get the perfect little coca leaf. And don't do anything to it till you give it. Very specific. And then wrappers from gum because it's shiny. and sugar, because it's rare. And coca leaves because they're considered spiritual. I so understand. Thank you. And sometimes he'll even pull out something that was once alive, usually an embryo, a fetus from a llama that has miscarried, because at 16,000 feet, miscarriages happen a lot. But it was alive, and so it's precious. And Benito would show it like, look, this is going to be a big offering. I don't want to touch it. We put it in, and then it's wrapped up, and it can't just be wrapped up. It's got to be beautifully wrapped up. And what's happening is that in this expression of this despacho is bringing the best, and bringing it with care and with love and with intention. It's not a throwaway. It is a gift to the Ma. There was only one time that I ever asked Benito for anything, and really seriously asked for anything, and it's when I seemed to be getting arthritis in my right hand, because I'd wake up and I couldn't move it, and sometimes I couldn't move it, and it was getting kind of gnarly and tight and sore. And so I said to Benito, this is what I want from Pachamama, is to heal my hand. And he looked at it like no big deal. Bada boom, bada bing, although he didn't say that. And he just said, blow that into the leaves. And I blew them into the leaves, and the next morning there was, and ever since, there's been no stiffness in my hand. And I don't think that God favors Benito, but Benito has learned to live on what we would call faith. He's learned to live in pure trust, therefore he is an epicenter of what can happen when you live in that kind of faith, because he believes that Pachamama or spirit or something will do anything for its creation. But you have to honor that creation. You have to honor the world, the earth, and then the earth gives back. Can you see how things could shift if we started to honor the earth we walked on? I should see at least one or two shaking heads, yes. Thank you. Benito lived generosity. There is a principle in nature of generosity. And it asks of us that we duplicate that nature, because just as when we're balanced, we are healthier, when we're generous, we receive more. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I still think of this. I still think of this, and I say it to myself all the time. It's a quote from the Old Testament where God is saying to Isaiah, "My thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways." Human beings are asked by Spirit to think and do in different ways, and it will always seem topsy-turvy. And being generous so that we can receive the goods seems topsy-turvy. It just seems weird. So if Benito isn't a good enough authority, I'm now turning to the Buddha. I want to talk about the Buddha. And I will be quoting from this book, The Buddha Is as the Buddha Does. So in this wonderful place that I got to get into, which is about, let me just give you a little idea about what this teaching is about. It is about generosity. He starts with this idea of generosity, but it does not mean sacrifice or martyrdom. Instead, it means releasing the dualistic ideas of giver and receiver, like they're separate. They're not separate. They're all interconnected. That's just the way it is. Life, when we really know it, is all interconnected. And science is proving it everywhere. Ernest Holmes said, one day the scientists will reach the mountaintops where the mystics will have been waiting for them. So Benito and Buddha will be up there, and the scientists will say, hey, guess what we just proved? And they'll go, yawn. Right on. Good for you. So this particular book is about the interconnection of life, and that there isn't anything except this circulating. I also put on my Facebook page an article about mother trees and how the oldest and most developed tree in any forest is interconnected to all the other trees in the forest, and that it shares its nutrients, and that there's a conversation going on below the ground. And that when trees are cut, they purposely put all the nutrients that are in their trunk and their roots, and they spread it out through the forest so that what's left of them can be shared with the next generation. This is all one system. Don't we love to sing about oneness? Well, Buddha says, live the oneness. See, an unbalanced life, it either being generous or receiving, unbalanced would be unhealthy. And the Buddha talks about some steps so that we can reach what we might call enlightenment or insight. It's called in Buddhism being a bodhisattva. In Christianity, it would be called being a saint. In Judaism, it's called being a minch. So who would like to be a bodhisattva, a saint, or a minch? Well, then this is for you. And the Buddha talked about 10 practices. I actually called them perfections, but we get all weird with perfection, so I changed it to practices. These are things that you do to perfect you, but I'll just call them practices. They're 10 practices, and they start with generosity. There was a gentleman, a lama, that came from Thailand, and he was a monk. A traditional forest monk from Thailand came to this country to observe Buddhism in America firsthand. After a few months, he confided to Sharon Salzberg, who wrote a book called Loving Kindness, something that perplexed him. In Asia, the classic sequence of teaching and practice is first generosity, then morality, then meditation, and then enlightenment. But here in the United States, the sequence seems to be meditation first for the object purpose of enlightenment, then morality, and after some time, as kind of an appendix, there's something called generosity. What's going on here? Why did we get it so confused? And why would Buddha start with generosity first? Well, first of all, I think it overcomes a sickness that is inherent in our Western culture, which is stinginess. Nature is not stingy. If you think about stinginess, the only times that there is stinginess is something like this Great Salt Lake or the Dead Sea, and that's when there's lots of receiving and no giving, and guess what happens? Get sick, because it's out of balance. I think the other reason that the Buddha started with generosity is because it's actually pretty easy to just begin. Wherever you are, you can just begin. And in the beginning, he says you start with stuff. You just give stuff. Stuff is the easiest thing to give. Just think, the Buddha says that the easiest way for enlightenment, the first step, is just give some stuff. Give some stuff. And then after that, you can start giving of your spirit, which would be encouragement and inspiration and love and hope and assurance. And then after that, you can give of your spiritual reality, which is that you share what works in your life, Because people will see your life works, and then they're going to want to know what you know, and you share it easily. This is not proselytizing. This is not going door to door. This is just sharing who you are. This is what works for me. And this, boy, the room changed a lot, didn't it? It was so much easier to just talk about the balance of nature. There are times I don't want to share what works for me. There's people that I'm afraid to share what works for me. But someday they might want to know what works for me, and am I willing to share it? How many of you have people like that? Family members, other folks. Buddha taught that generosity is good for us when it's a joy for us. Now, I want to share with you what is not generosity. And I am guilty of all of this. This is what is not generous. When we give out of fear. Like, I'll be disliked or go to hell if I don't do it. That's not generosity. When we give mechanically in accordance with tradition, such as Aunt Martha gave me something last year for Christmas, I better get her something this year for Christmas. When we give out of expectation of getting something in return, such as if I help her, then she'll help me, and if I do this, I get to go to heaven. If we give in order to secure our reputation, ooh, I get to donate something and get a plaque. If we give out of guilt, oh dear, oh, they've been so good to me, I better do this. If we give simply to get rid of stuff, which I get rid of a lot of stuff, but it's not generosity. The gentleman who wrote this book, Lama Surya Das, tells the story of going to an ashram that was being set up in the United States, and it was somebody's house. And a lama had come from Tibet and was really honored, and it was an honorable thing that he was staying in this house. And he heard someone in the kitchen say, "Let's get rid of these faux tofu hot dogs because I've never liked them. We'll give them to the lama." Meaning, guess what? We've got a bunch of people to feed, so let's get rid of this stuff. That's not generosity. It is not generous when I say anybody that would like manure can come and get it. It's incredibly self-serving. But you can still come and get it. All you want. We'll help you load. We can, let's see, when we give for the sheer joy it creates in the world for everyone involved, without concern for what we may receive, that is generosity. That's generosity. There was a moment when I was just having I guess I'd done a lot of meditation. I was just feeling so expanded. And I walked down to our mailbox, and it's quite a ways, like from here to the street outside, from our house to the mailbox. And I'm looking up at the trees, and I'm so thankful that they're giving me oxygen, and they're not saying anything. They're not saying, "You better do this for us." They're just generous. Nature is generous. I want to share with you another study on happiness. I'm so grateful we're studying happiness. In this particular study, 2 groups of people were given $5. To one group that got $5, they said, "Go out and do something for yourself. Just give yourself a little treat and come back here when you're done, and we're going to give you a little survey." And then the other group was given the same $5, and they said, "Go out and do something for somebody else, with this $5, we know it's not much, but just do a little something for somebody and then come back and take a survey. Guess who was happier? The second group. If they could find a way to make somebody's life better, even with $5, they were so much happier than the group that went out and got the coffee or the ice cream cone or whatever you could get with $5. I don't know, that's 2 Snickers bars, really. And so these people could be high on sugar, and they were still not as happy as the other group. There is something in our nature that wants to be generous. And the reason that I'm doing this talk is, I don't know if I said it, I know I said it first service, and I may be repeating myself, but it's worth saying, is that I've been reading that what's happening in our Western culture is that we're getting stingier and stingier, and more me and my clan-centric. We're not allowing what we have to reach out underneath in the ground of being and feed everyone. It's just our group. What they're finding with those trees is that they give to trees that aren't even of their species. Is species for trees too? They're sharing everything. They share with Licton. They share everywhere. They're not discriminating, you know? That pine tree over there was really shading me when I was growing up. So I'm going to just keep my nutrients to myself and share with my offspring and only my offspring. That's what humans might do, but it's not what nature does. Nature is generous. It looks for ways to give, and therefore it's balanced, and therefore it's healthy. Let's take a deep breath. There are 2 essays by the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, one on nature and one on the law of compensation. For those that want further study, they're great essays to read. So you can read and you can study, or you can join me now, allowing yourself to receive from the great Spirit that fills this room. For this room is one big despacho. So much care and love and prayer has gone into this place. So many stories have been shared. And the Spirit has taken them in and gives freely to each and every one of us who are willing to receive. The gift has been made. So here's a suggestion. If you choose, you can ask for a more generous heart. And that your generous heart lead you into generous actions. And that your generous actions will give to the world around you and balance your environment and bring health and vitality and thriving to your experience of life, if you choose. And so I give thanks that there is a presence, there is a power, and sometimes it comes up from the earth, and sometimes it comes in from us on all sides, and sometimes it lights upon us like a dove or a hawk. But that Spirit is the divine Spirit of givingness. For God so loved, it gave. And so I give thanks that for each and every person here who's willing to know more of their own spiritual magnificence, they are willing to move into that path, be on that path of the bodhisattva, of the saint, of the minch, and move into the unfoldment of their own divine magnificence. And so therefore I know that anyone here who chooses can receive in this moment a generous heart. All that is needed is a simple affirmation privately with the God of their own being. And as I know that and then say that, I ask you, are you willing and do you want it? And all you have to do is say, Father, Mother, God within, I am ready. I am ready. And something echoes in our awareness that goes something like this. Ah, my beloved, in whom I am well pleased. And the blessings abound. And after receiving a generous heart, what is it that you would desire? What do you want to ask of Spirit, that which listens? The God of Bridget, what do you want? What do you want to ask Pachamama, Mother Earth, Father Sky? Ask, be specific. And then let it be. And so it will always be. And so it is.